works.
We'll see, because it's been canceling.
It's working, right?
Yeah, but it's been canceling.
It doesn't say that you're on.
All right, lift off. Oh God, I hope it stays on here.
Let's go see little baby mama.
Okay, thank you to my technical.
Let's go see.
Bye, your son. Hi, everybody.
Check your audio.
Oh man, I am so sorry, you guys, for the late thing. My internet was just not working. Thank you for joining in. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. I'm so sorry it's been 15 minutes of me. I'm sweating, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and add our beautiful guest today and just get to it because that took way too long here. Her name is Rasha. You may have heard of her. All right, hop on in.
Oh
Hey.
my God. Hi.
Hi, I'm so sorry that took forever.
You know, it's basically 2021 summed up. It's okay. It's fine.
God. And this has been my day all day. So I apologize, everybody. 16 minutes. Oh, I feel so bad, but I'm just happy that we're on. So I'm not trying to, be ungrateful here. Thank you so much, Rasha, for joining me. You look beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Got zhuzhed up for you a little bit. Let me even it out.
Thank you. All right. Okay. So, like I said, we're talking with Rasha Altadoka today. Let's just get straight to it. Tell us about yourself, your connection to the Caucasus, your background, where you've lived, where do you currently live? Just kind of place us. Get us situated on
Okay.
that.
Circassian, as you would guess. My parents are from Syria. My brother and I were born in Saudi Arabia. I came to the U.S. at the age of 8, and then we settled eventually into Wayne. Kind of made the migratory Patterson-Haldon into Wayne. You know, the normal transition we all somehow go through.
Right.
And then after college, I went and lived in Syria for 2 years. Oh. And then after that, I started this like love affair with travel. But then I was like, let me come back home. So I came back home, got into a whole new world of advertising, pharmaceutical advertising. And I was like, ooh, love it. I'm working in the city, feeling good. And then that kind of took off. And fast forward, relationships and such moving ahead, I got an offer to go to Dubai to do what I was doing in New York, essentially. A little different, but similar, same field. And then I spent 5 years in Dubai, almost 5 years. And I came back in 2018 officially. I got remarried to a James Kiley, who's upstairs. We're in isolation because of COVID land.
Oh, no.
That's why this nasal thing is happening right now. So.
Everybody, we're still like, I'm pretty sure we got it. We're still like sifting through mucus over here. It's so much fun.
Story of my life. Yeah. This is it. It's mucus and COVID and isolation. But so we got married in 2019. We were living in the city, and then we moved right back to Wayne in the like height of the pandemic exodus that was happening out of New York.
Right. Oh man.
Found an amazing little spot on a lake. I wanted a lake, and here we are. We're on a lake, and I get to look at a beautiful 2 swans right now, currently enjoying their afternoon in
I know your swans. You've posted them. That's so nice.
They're kind of amazing. Yeah. So that's kind of the geographical timeline, like super top line. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. I'm not gonna lie. Settling back here after being away for so many years was definitely one, unexpected. It was like pandemic happened. We're like, 1-bedroom apartment in the city. We could live in like a multi-bedroom place. Yeah, let's get out of here.
Right.
But it was actually like the right time. I'm going to say this, and it might piss off some people.
Okay.
But I didn't appreciate, or I didn't have the wherewithal, the awareness to show like true appreciation for our little community until I left. And then, because I was the kid who was like, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to leave. I can't wait. Like, I'm so over this. I'm so over these people.
Right.
This small community mindset. And then I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to come back. Like, your mind did something very fun. It's very funny when you're kind of away. It like romanticizes this community and this, our culture and our food and our stories and our parents. And like, you know, you kind of see it in a different way, never really resolving any of the issues that you had, but somehow you like, you know, romanticize it.
Right.
So I came back with like this, oh my God, I'm gonna have halva every day when I want. I'm gonna, you know, like, and it actually has been happening more than ever. Like, we just continue to get the goods. My mom's dropping off food left and right. Like, yeah, it's been pretty sweet. But it's funny, like, it just got me thinking, you know, like, what is it about us? What is it? How do you kind of reconcile and come full circle with your community and background when it might not have been so easy on people, you know, like growing up. I mean, it's not all roses. It wasn't, you know, every small group comes with its own sort of baggage, and our generational trauma is heavy. So how do we as a community like reconcile it? How do we as individuals reconcile with it?
Right.
And then what do we do moving forward? Yeah, I've been going through my own sort of personal inner work. I've been going through therapy, physical therapy, psychotherapy, like just trying to kind of unpack it all and make sure that I'm seeing it for all it is. Because sometimes we have, I don't know if this sounds or resonates with you, but I feel like in general, at least the upbringing I had, it's all or nothing. It's black or white, right? It's like, right. It's good or bad. It's romantic, you know, la vie en rose, or it's like this terrible, you know, experience altogether.
Right.
And I've been, I guess, trying to like really dig deep and find the gray space in it all, the good that sits in there. Because it's okay to have like a tense relationship with it. It's okay to question it, and it's okay to, you know, wonder where you fit in it. And it might not be something you solve very quickly. It might be a couple of years in the making before you get to that place where you're really feeling good about it.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like I've done, I mean, I went deep. Like, I went real deep. And it's been quite an adventure realizing, you know, all of the good things that our culture instills in us and how it sort of impacts us in our personal relationships, in our professional relationships. But then it's like, but when it's unchecked, when it's like done without awareness and with maybe like just on autopilot,
right,
it can be pretty detrimental. It can cause some serious harm. And that's where like you get into the generational trauma. That's where you get into like these sort of cycles being repeated. You get, you know, a culture of like in general that's incapable of communicating clearly, that's incapable of putting themselves and their boundaries and their needs first, because we come from a place of like communal, you know, like the group comes first and then you're second. That's how we survived. That's how we got here. That's why we're here today, right?
Right.
But like at this stage, when the battle is no longer the battle, right? Like the physical sort of the chase, harm, the war that's up, it's no longer upon you. How do you sort of regulate? How do you sit there with all of that? How do you start saying, okay, for me, Rasha, me, what do I need out of it? How do I change and pivot my relationships with my friends, my family? How do I articulate my needs better? How do I build the strength? That's a muscle we've not been taught or trained to like
Right.
flex hard, or at all. So like, what does that mean? What does that mean for us, you know, as a culture moving forward? And I think, I think, I mean, I'm starting to sort of undo it, and it takes a lot of individual work. But then I wonder, as a community, where does that leave us like 10 years from now, when like mental health's the topic du jour,
Right.
and you know, setting boundaries for 2022 and everything we're leaving behind and all of that. And so it's like, well, how do we as a group take that forward? How do we embody that? How do we raise children to be resilient? How do we, you know, take ourselves out of this, you know, traditional like misery loves company kind of mindset, and go forward and like truly prosper as individuals and as a community? I don't have the answer, but these are the thoughts that kind of rattle around in my head all the time.
Well, basically everything that you said, I understand. I mean, I haven't seen a therapist yet.
Get on that train.
But, yeah, I know. I've been doing a lot of like self work.
It starts there.
Yeah.
You gotta switch it on and
Right.
find like the awareness. Oh my God, Marina, sorry. My ADHD kicked in.
You know, the comments are the best part, I'm telling you. Look at your cat. Miss Dusty. If
I'm gonna do a pano. Dusty sitting there.
Oh, for the people.
For the people, Dusty, come join us.
So cute. So I would say that everything that you've talked about is basically like the underlying foundation of why I had this urge to make this page, because I feel like as Circassians, as maybe Caucasians in general, because of our generational trauma, we tend to keep to ourselves. We tend to have a side that maybe we don't want to share with people.
God forbid you show vulnerability.
That's
a terrible trait,
right? So I feel like, you know, on my page, posting things about different topics, about ancestors, and, you know, as the page hopefully progresses, different things like generational trauma, like joy, just feeling joy, being openly happy, different topics like that. But I do want to show that there is a way to be Circassian and be a proud Circassian, and reflect on all of those things, but also connect to your culture in an authentic way that makes sense to you, as you reconcile things like your upbringing, maybe some things that happened that were like, oh, you know, that was rough. You know?
Did anyone else see that?
Like, yeah, right. So I feel like everything that you said, I mean, I'm on board with all that. So
how do we do it, Noor?
How do we do it? Well, we got to talk about it, right?
Totally.
I mean, from what I understand, you know, these issues, it's not just the mind, it's not just talking. Like in our culture, we have this beautiful dancing, but I also feel like the dancing and the food and the khabza left alone is beautiful, but for a lot of us, I feel like we're looking for something a little bit more based on what we've experienced.
Yeah.
How do we connect it all together? I mean, just to walk around saying, "Oh, I'm Circassian," you know, like, I mean, in Turkey, people know what that is, and this is like, it still trips me out when you say, "I'm Cherkess." They're like, "Oh, Cherkess," you know?
I know you. My grandmother's Cherkess. You're like, wait, what?
I know, it's so trippy, but like back home, like when your brain is developing and you're growing up and like nobody knows what that is.
Yeah.
And then everybody kind of deals with that in their way. You know, some people will remove it because it's too much to explain. Some people will say, "I'm Russian." I'm this, you know, some people don't want to talk about it. They don't even look like they could be anything else. So like, you know, I'm just gonna like, just whatever. I'm from here. I'm from New Jersey or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I'm from Wales. Can't you tell? My name says so.
Right. And I just feel like maybe like enough people saying like, yeah, I have that experience or that happened to me might make you feel a little bit less alone or, you know.
Well, totally. I mean, think about it. Like, how representation matters for like people of color and,
Right.
like seeing, black dolls or a black president, or like those are things that are affirming on like a core level to people of color. Right. And I'm like, we need to get to that point. We're seeing ourselves in different ways. Maybe it's not on a presidential scale, but it's on seeing these conversations sort of taking place openly in our community without fear of judgment, without fear of like reprisal in some capacity. And I honestly think the first part of it sort of precedes the let's talk about it. It's like, let's get into a space where we accept it, where we can accept challenges to our perceived identity, where, Noor's representation, how she presents outward of being Circassian is different than Rasha's, doesn't mean Noor's right or Rasha's wrong or vice versa. It's just, it is what it is. If I didn't go to dance class, every day of the week, like everybody else, does that make me less Circassian? If I can't articulate Circassian words, but I can read or write better than most people can in our community because I know the letters and I recall them and I do some work there, does that make me more Circassian or less Circassian? Do you know what I mean? Right. So it's like, I feel like we as a community, spend a lot of time worrying about the other, labeling, judging, and not necessarily bad. It's just like a natural human instinct to categorize and point things out. And that's what we do. Our brain catalogs and says, this is what it is, this is what it is. But I think if you're doing it with a little bit more awareness, if you're doing it with a little understanding of like, there is a gray scale. There's 100 million ways to represent. And we should be okay with that. Then the dialogue starts. Right. Then we get into it. Then we can start really picking apart. Like, I truly believe every single one of us needs to go to therapy. We need it as a community. We've gone through some tough shit, excuse me, but like, we didn't get here by accident. But the what was at stake to get here was heavy, and it sits in every single one of us. It sits there in our freaking DNA, in my parents' conversations, in my aunts and uncles overseas. Like, it's still there. It's still like it's permeated into our our DNA.
It's potent.
Yeah. It's really, really potent.
You can't cut through that with a butter knife. It is thick,
So like, I do think there's a couple of things that need to happen. Put aside judgy hat and label hat and just start thinking of you. See the gray scale that's very, in all of nature, it's gray. There's no black or white. There's a rainbow of colors and experiences and, choices. And like, it's not be a doctor or an engineer. There's a million other things you can do. And I think that applies to the way like our Circassian mindset is sometimes oversimplified for the sake of preservation. And I get that, but we've persevered. We're still here. Yes, there are going to be those folks who are like, oh, our language is dying. Oh, our culture is dying. Sure, we can continue to fight that battle, but it's no longer like a physical harm that's chasing us, right? People, generations have been here in the US, in Turkey, and in the Caucasus themselves, like homes are built, language is spoken, like things are happening. So like, let's take the good, take stock of it, and then be able to say, all right, well, now how do we really unpack it? How do we really do this? Right. I think those steps get you into the right frame of like a good dialogue and good conversation. I really do.
I agree. I mean, I think that you said that beautifully. That's where that therapy talk comes in. I feel like I've had that thought for years where I was like, man, I wish the CBA had a home therapist, like a local therapist, but people have to be ready to talk, like you said.
You know what? I had this conversation with my parents, and not to out my family, but they were like, "Oh my God, what if somebody finds out we're in therapy?" And I was like,
Right.
unless you're shouting it out like I am, who's finding out?
Right.
It's your personal thing. You just do it for you. But it's still kind of to the point of like how pervasive community thinking is and group think is.
Right.
It's like, oh my God, I can't take a step and do something for myself because everyone else is going to know about it.
Right.
I'm like, that's not how it works.
Right.
And I think, not to get a little, too negative, but I think there really is on a communal level, a lot of people operate from a place of fear or shame. And it's usually shame, because the shame family is like super huge.
Right.
And fear, it's always like a mindset of like the lack mindset. Something's wrong, someone's going to find out, someone is, going to judge me, I think we have to like turn that, flip it. It's not that. Nobody's judging you. You know how many years I've spent worried with every step I take that someone's looking at me. Oh my God, someone's going to say something. Someone's going to do something. And I'm like, I promised myself I'm putting that, like, no one's doing that. You're not the main character.
Right.
Like, let it go. No one's judging you. No one's having
Right.
that dialogue except you in your head. And I think that's what I mean when like culture and community go unchecked, because it really, you're always told, what if somebody finds out? What if someone what if someone sees you? What if someone, like, I'm sure that sounds familiar to so many, like it's hard to let that go. It's it's everything. And so I married an Xeno, and I experienced it firsthand. I was like, wait a minute. He's like, why do you think people are thinking about you? Like, why do you even think of other people when you're making decisions? I was like, how do you function without thinking that?
Oh my God.
How do you take these steps without the consideration of others?
Paralyzing,
and I was like,
paralyzing consideration.
Yeah. And I know people who go through like decision, like analysis paralysis, because they're over and over and over thinking it. And I'm like, I look at my husband, I'm like, whoa. I'm like, you go the exact opposite. I'm like, you over index on like super American individualism. And I'm like, I'm somewhere here, maybe not so far here,
Right.
but like
Right.
even to me, I was like, oh my God, like that's so extremos. And and so different than what I'm comfortable with. I'm working on it, but I'm definitely not there.
Right.
So yeah, it's been especially like seeing my culture through our sort of the new lens of our relationship has been also eye-opening, like what it means to, as silly as like, wajib. I'm sure for some people, like, we got to do this, we got to do that. Oh, they're coming. Wajib, that word, and like try to translate wajib to an American. I'm sorry, it's just like, well, you have to, this obligation, but why? Because like it's wajib, it's what you do.
Everybody said so.
Yeah, it's like that's what we do, but who said so? Why? And I'm like, there's a lot there. I don't think you realize how much you're in it and how much it like maneuvers all of your like decision points throughout the day, until you either leave the community. When I was in Dubai, and in Sham doesn't count so much because I feel like I was still in it in a different capacity, right? Like the Circassian community is pretty tight there too. But then like being in Dubai, where it's like super culture, multicultural, multifactorial, like all these people coming together, but then marrying somebody non-Circassian, and you're like, whoa. And that kind of comes up in therapy a lot. Why I get triggered by things and why he doesn't. And it's really fascinating. So when I say everyone should do it, you really should. Even if it's a couple of sessions, give yourself 6 months in therapy and see what happens. Like seriously, it's life-changing.
You know, something I've noticed is as a female, and then I think I've seen a pattern among other females that like good, you know, to be good, and then you to be good you have to follow a certain like protocol, like you're expected to do certain things at certain points in your life. And then if something throws you off, like a divorce or like something, you know, something comes, the impact that it has makes you, I mean, you know, the fear, right, of being like out in the open, vulnerable. Oh my God, look what happened to this person. Knowing that you're like on the news report and houses and stuff. Breaking news. Yeah, that feeling. And then as time goes on, it kind of fades. It's not a big deal, but the way that it changes you is so profound. It's so profound because that idea of like, well, I did everything right. I tried to, you know, be like a good role model. Like I tried to do everything that didn't work out. And I feel like some people, they end up very, not jaded, not cynical. Dejected. Yeah. So it just, and then it becomes about the culture. It becomes the culture is the target, the community. It's like you become very angry. You harbor a lot of anger towards these things. And I mean, I went through it in my personal life. I'm sure that there are people who are going to watch this that went through that. Yeah. And for me, I always wanted to be so proud of my culture, but when some things happen to you or they happen to the people you really care about, like a family member or something like that, you don't know where to go with your feelings and your anger, right? So I mean, I was lucky enough to have, because I've lived out of the community like for years now, right? I've been lucky enough to have just that space to process things, to get through it in my own time, but I know a lot of people don't have that luxury. Yeah. So it's just kind of like coming back after everything and just being like, you know what? I'm trying to make peace with it. I'm trying to be like it from deep inside, understand just where I am, my place in this world, my identity, you know. And for me, that connection came from my ancestors. Like when I think about my lineage, I don't know their names, you know, I don't know what happened exactly to them. I just did a post about ancestors, but there's like a hard stop basically in my family tree. You just don't know. And, but I think about 300, 400, 500 years ago, who are the people that helped build who I am today? And that's where I came around to that. And I wanted to ask you, so when, after your just like life experiences and stuff, what was it that pulled you back to I mean, you moved back to the community, but you're trying, like what I'm saying is you have this inner desire to process it. So what kind of triggered that for you? What put you in a position where you're like, I want to work on this. I want to work this out.
I will say a couple of things. I think if I look back, I want to address one point you brought up.
Sure.
And the point was, like, you talked about, you know, the feeling proud of your community and your culture and all of that.
Right.
And I think just without going like to therapy, into the therapy deep end, right. I think we need to, that goes back to my whole black and white thing. I think what people need to remember is you can hold multiple feelings. You can have multiple, you can love it, you can hate it, you can feel resentful, you can feel angry for the things that happen to you. It's not all or nothing. So let's start there. Like, it's okay to have multiple ways you see your community. And from there, we go into the work, right? So I'll tell you what sort of got me into even questioning all of this. And it didn't start with me. It started with like the rampant drug abuse in our community. It started there.
Right.
And I was like, and I started seeing our guys, our male members of our community.
Right.
And I started like questioning, why is it the men in our community, young men, you know, middle-aged men, that really struggle with this? Why isn't it the women? And what is it about the women that not forces them, because it has happened. We've lost members of our community to drug abuse, male and female.
Right.
But that's what triggered it. And I started having these questions. And then I started questioning like the Circassian sort of father-son wound that very much exists.
It's so, yeah.
It's so, and look, I get it when it was battle. I get it when, you know, why there's such a hard, we struggle with communicating, we struggle with showing our emotions, we struggle with the range of emotions. It's either content, quiet,
right.
or like rage. You know, there's no there's no like gray line in the middle of like happy, content, frustrated, let's talk about it. It's either 0 to 60, again, black and white.
Right.
So it started there. That's where I started questioning, like, what's up with us? What's happening? Why do we have this problem? And then it kind of snowballed into, well, what is it really doing for me? It's not just the guys, you know, like I'm seeing this effect in my daily life. I saw it in my professional life.
Oh.
And I like, it was really jarring. So it started with outward recognition of the drug issues. Then I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, I'm being told by management. This might have been my first or second real like corporate role. And I remember my manager at the time, Medium, maybe you're watching, but this was when I was working for BAT in Syria. And she was like, I'm gonna need you to speak up.
Oh.
She's like, you're really quiet. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? I'm doing what I was always taught that is a good thing, is I'm quiet, I'm observant, I'm taking notes, and I'm listening. And the adults, the professionals, the ones more senior than me are speaking. And I'm like, she's like, yeah, but you have a point of view and you need to speak up. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm permitted to speak. What? You know, like that was in 2005. Not to date me, but like it's been many years. And I'm like still struggling with that.
Right.
I just, after therapy, professional coaching, a lot of like performance reviews, and I've progressed in my career, but it's still something deep inside that I'm like, oh, but am I still the young kid that is like, when does it flip? When you're like, you know, allowed to speak and allowed to lead? When do I become an adult? Because for the longest time I was the younger person in my community, and you know, like I'm sure I don't blame the community for it. That's not the answer, but just showing like the dynamic and how it can enter into your no matter the degree. Like I didn't need an MBA. I needed the permission to speak. And in my head, I was like, the permission was an MBA.
Wow.
It offered me yes, there's new thinking, always learning, all those wonderful things. But like, it didn't change my pay scale dramatically that I'm like, wow, the investment's really worth it. It was a total me moment that I needed to get over because somehow that gave me the permission to speak.
Wow.
And that's my experience. I'm not speaking for every person, but I feel like I've talked with enough women of our community to know that is pretty common.
I have it.
Yeah.
Everything that you just said, I have.
Yeah.
I have. I'm thinking about a career change. And I keep telling myself I have to go back to school. I have to get like certified. I have to like do these things, and I'm reaching out to people in that field. And I'm like, so like, what do you think I should do? Like, what was your path? And I can't do what they did. You know, I'm not. I'm starting at 35. You know, I'm not starting at 16 or 20 or 22. So, you know, and I feel like I really relate to that, because I feel like I've said it actually, where I'm like, who's gonna want to hear me talk if I don't have like letters next to my name? Like, I have to go so in my mind so high just to be able to like talk about.
I'm not a tamada, as Rasha says in the comments. It's like, I'm not the ultimate expert on this. And so it's like, but nobody's asking for to be the ultimate expert. They want your point of view, you know, like they want to see you think and speak for yourself.
Right.
And it's like, I had to, when I tell you, it's like, not just cobwebs, it felt like chains. I'm peeling off me. I'm like, okay, let's clear that throat chakra. Let's, you know, get that voice out there.
Right.
And, you know, it's funny. The only time I felt like I was able to truly express is through song, which is why I love choir, because it's like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. There's roles, there's assignments, and here I am doing what I'm allowed to do, which is sing and be vocal. Not right now, but but yeah, I think those were the like areas that like kind of funneled me into this like path of a little bit more self-discovery, a little bit more like peel back. And I will say, I started questioning these things before I moved to Dubai. And then I moved to Dubai and I was like floored by the creativity, the like the discussion. Work with Lebanese and you will appreciate like the energy, the discussion, the liveliness. And I was like, oh shit, I'm like, this is it. It's like, this is what I need. This is the kind of energy I need to bring, you know, like let's do it. Let's, you know, let's work on that. Let's bring that discussion and dialogue. I think when I think of like my upbringing in my home, and when I think of other, you know, like what the non-refugee style upbringing, right? Where it was like discussion and openness for the most part, I'm generalizing here, but I think of mine where it's like, speak when spoken to, don't cry. I told you not to cry. Swallow it. You don't, you know, like don't express anything. And so to go from that to like, you know, like just having the ability to speak and think and question and back and forth, I'm like, whoa, that was like, to me, Dubai was the time of like true healing. It was needed on so many levels. And then professionally, it opened me up to this like leveling up of your game. I was like, whoa, I'm running behind you guys. I got to catch up, you know, like also, you know, what's it called? Like limitations, like, and self-doubt. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta catch up. So I came back and I was like, all right, it sounds like I need my MBA and I need to get over this hump. So yeah, it's not, I don't say this in a blamey, like our culture did this to us. It didn't. There are amazing things that it offered us and there are amazing things that we imbue from it. However, without awareness, without sort of understanding and checking yourself, like vis-a-vis other cultures and experiences and travel and whatever, it's no good if it's in a bubble. It's no good if it's in silo. You need to see it. You need to let it breathe and let it evolve and sort of interact and, you know, like have that chemical reaction with everything in the world around it so that it can evolve and grow and survive. Because you can't be, you know, people of the mountain when you no longer live on the mountain. Right. We're here. How do we evolve? How do we keep our community like thriving and resilient? Like, I think about this next generation of like the Gen Zers of our community, and I'm like, oh, I'm so excited for you. I'm so amazed that you're able to like articulate the things that took me 40 freaking years to like figure out and like start talking about. You're already on it. You're already seeking therapy and talking and like being vocal and standing up for what you believe in and like not being afraid. I'm like, I know that's how culture survives.
Right.
That's how it progresses. They may not know, you know, like a language or a couple of things may have gone by the wayside, but that's nothing because the ultimate prize is still there.
Right.
Sorry, I see a big question. How do we evolve and have these experiences without being able to travel and understand the different cultures? I had the same epiphany moving out of state. Oh gosh, yeah. I think that's kind of it's. I think as a with like obviously if you're privileged, you're able to travel and do these things, and you know I appreciate my privilege for that. I think on a community level, like our administration of the CBA could do a better job of welcoming, like, you know, welcoming other groups and cultures in. I recall, this is gonna, so you're gonna hear this and you're gonna remember when you know a non-Circassian wedding was taking place at the CBA back then, like in the late or mid 90s, let's say. It was like, oh, how dare you come into our space? You know, like this is our space. And I'm like, now that version of me died a long time ago. Bye. Now I'm like, oh wow, look at their costume, look at their heritage, look at how they celebrate. Like, what can we learn from that? How can we grow from that? Are there similarities? It's never done. I think just from a CBA type, maybe we can be a little bit more inclusive of surrounding communities, have like a you know, in the same way coexist happens, could we be a little bit embracing of our Asian culture and Asian roots? And you know, like we're not just white people in masking as white people. That's not what we are. Like we're much deeper than that. And I think like it's really it's something that we can do on a like community level. On an individual is like, check the accounts you follow. Check, you know, like if we're in the social media world, are you taking the time to learn? Are you reading some books about different, there's audiobooks if you don't like reading. There's like, you know, Lucid is an amazing app that like, you know, translates big concept books into these really perfect visual size sound bites. Like there's no more excuse in the age of information to be like, I don't know how. And I'm just going to do my thing and do what I, you know, normally do. Right. I think, you know, you can make an effort to curate your life so that you're in contact with these, even if it's virtually with different cultures and customs and experiences, and even by food. Like try different foods and be, you know, open that. Sometimes food is the way to get into this new world. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Rasha.
I wanted to chime into what you were saying. So, I mean, I didn't name this page actually Circassian. I named it actually Caucasian. And I sincerely hope that I can get other people from the region on here to talk to, because as soon as you zoom out of the Circassian community, the diversity in that area is so amazing. And I feel like I'm just like learning about it. And it took me coming to Turkey, where out here they have Kafkas centers. Yes. They have like Cherkess and Chechen and like, but they have centers that are like for all Kafkasi people, and the dance groups there dance everybody's dances. And I was like floored. I was like, wait, I thought we're not allowed to mix.
You know what, Noor? This is so endemic in our thinking, but like, check this out. In my first visit to the Caucasus, I'm visiting, we're in Nalchik. We're kind of doing the Elbrus tour. We're going up to the mountains and kind of discovering the areas around. My cousin Bishop, who's like an amazing director out there and like does movies, like song video clips and stuff like that for the amazing singers out there. So he's taking us on all these like, you know, cultural sites. And then I remember I'm doing like, you know, I'm kind of documenting it on my story. And I'm like, oh, and this is a Belkar village. And this, he's like, Circassian. Chudkas, we're all the same. He's like, stop with the
Oh.
labels. And he's like,
Oh.
Caucasus, we're all here. And I was
Wow.
like, wow, even in the like homeland,
Motherland,
yeah, like they've become more integrated, and
Wow.
those barriers have broken. But somehow the diaspora community still thinks in, you know, like, okay, you fit in this box and you fit in this box and don't mix and don't. And I was like, I'm probably still like that. It was a challenge to think that way. He was like, why are you saying that? And I was like, oh. Well,
I don't have an answer. I just thought
I was like, I don't know. The story didn't. I was like, okay. I'm like, you're right, because he heard me recording a video about it, and I'm like, he's like, we're all Circassian, we're all Chudkas, and I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. And I remember like taking it down and restating the story, because the more we incorporate in our narrative the divisions, the longer we stay divided.
Right.
And then we were just kind of stuck in that same moment of time.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, we can't even get beyond our own walls. So I get why there's struggles of like accepting truly, you know, different cultures and communities. But like, yeah, I think we need a harsh, like, shine the light on, you know, like how we talk about ourselves.
Right.
And your page, I remember when I saw sort of the teasers that it was coming, I was like, this is so like in vogue right now, like so with the times, because we need to do it. We need to like challenge how we perceive ourselves, challenge how we perceive the other, you know, the non-Circassian, that big general lump of people that we've labeled the rest of the world.
Right.
It's not us against them. Nothing happens in silos. No magic happens there. It's when the chemical reactions are happening that the magic happens. When you mix and interact and learn and feel the tension and question and challenge, like that's when it's happening.
Right.
And I think we really need to embody that more and more. And I believe the younger folks are trying to do that.
I agree. And I feel like watching the American race and culture stage helps me understand that about my own culture.
Yeah.
Because when you see like xenophobia or a constricting in accepting different cultures and languages and things like that, only one thing happens, you know, and it's not like a good thing, you know, where now we're not letting in these people and we're not letting in these people, and if you're speaking anything except English, I mean, it's not a good look, you know. Yeah. It's just not cute. So,
like, come on, guys, this is kind of like the way we should be looking at things. Right. Like I think, you know, I will say the indigenous struggle that's become so prevalent on social media, and I'm so thankful for it.
Oh, that's so inspiring to me. I'm floored. All day could talk about that. It's so inspiring to me.
I know, and I'm like, how is it? Like, we need that. We need a day at the CBA where we take the American indigenous struggle that's happened here, showcase all of it, how it permeates into the health and well-being of communities, what it means, like, to, you know, how do you actually win this fight is when you bring other people in to support you. And when you not integrate in the loss of identity, but integrate in the finding and understanding of your identity. I think we could do a lot of learning from there, and it could be something so important, you know, for as younger people. Like, I think there's something when the diaspora in general, and Lara had mentioned it, the diaspora is still in survival mode. And we are, very much so. Our parents totally are. I'm probably, you know, maybe from 90% to like 60%, and I'm working to whittle it down. But like, I think, I lost my train of thought. Always lose my train of thought.
It'll come back. The same thing happens to me. I'll just it'll come. Cut me off as soon as it comes back. But for me, like, just watching and learning about indigenous culture, I use that phrase. I am an indigenous person of the Caucasus. There it is. All right.
It was about indigenous identification, and I think I think Caucasians, Circassians, Cherkess, we've been in survival mode, and survival mode has forced a lot of us to mask our true identity,
Yes.
right? So like, where are you from? Oh, I'm, from southern Russia. I'm Circassian, whatever, but like, you're white. You're white.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you mask as white person.
Right.
And you mask as somebody that, is sort of, you're kind of on the periphery, you're almost cultural, but like just familiar enough because of your skin tone that you're like, you're not frightful to someone.
Right. Oh, dude.
Like, and we've gotten by for so long.
Yes, we have.
We cannot use that anymore. It's done. Like, we've used that card. Now it's like, you really want your culture and identity to survive? You gotta embrace it.
You gotta
embrace it. And like, I'm not saying wearing your fascia to work every day, like that kind of thing. But like, you're not, Joe or Mike or
whatever.
Like whatever it is. It is our responsibility, not only for our culture, but for other indigenous people, to represent, to talk about it, to push the dialogue, to not be complacent when the discussion's happening in front of us. No, we have an opinion. We have a fucking opinion. Excuse me. Sorry.
Don't apologize.
But
company, don't apologize.
Like, we owe it to ourselves and our ancestors to speak that, and to not just be complacent about it. Like, I think now, I started at a new company, and they have this like diversity equity group, and they have all these features on culture and Black, Indigenous people of color, sort of, representation. And I'm like, my name's Rasha. You can't miss, like, I can't be like, Jane Smith. Right. I'm not, like, my name says it. And I used to, for so many years, because of survival mode, lean away from it, not necessarily like discard it, but I just never leaned into it. And I think now, like, leaning in, and yes, Lara, thank you, representing more authentically, being like true with it, and no longer kind of, like it's a passing passing part of your identity. Right. Like, I used to be so afraid of expressing like where I'm from, what's my name stand, like, what does it mean? Where does it come from? And not that I wasn't proud, but I didn't have the benefit of like entering a school system. Like, I was barely in the Hilden public school system. So I went into Wayne at a time when little to no Circassians were there. Yeah. And that was really like, I went from safety, community, for like, to, hey, you're in the deep end, figure it out. And so I masked hard. I was like, I'm familiar, you guys. I'm not weird. I don't have any ethnic food, like, and
sandwiches.
Yeah.
What is that?
Moose caca? Like, yeah. I experienced that. That's why my Big Fat Greek Wedding resonates so hard. But like, I think now at this age, to quote other Rasha, like, no more filters, no more masks. Like, it's real. It's real representation. And it's not just, I want to be clear. It's not that I wasn't speaking or telling people who I am and where I'm from. It's that I wasn't standing up for something of that same category. Right. That I wasn't like proudly supporting my identity, but other Indigenous identities too. Right. And I think that's where it's changed. And I think that's where we have to do better. And that's when it really becomes like, when that purpose sort of is at the front of everything you do, then your identity becomes a game changer. Right.
And just to add to that, for anybody, because I have been messaging people like left and right, to come on here. I feel like everybody's voice is legitimate, interesting. You know, we all have a right to just sit and talk about what we think. And every once in a while, I get somebody who says, you know, I'm not in a good place with my culture, not in a good place with my community, and my heart just goes out to them because I've been there.
Yeah.
And you know, it's also about taking back that identity and that part of you in spite of whatever came and tried to come between you.
Yeah.
Because that's super important. That's like, you know, you had like a favorite song and you associated it with somebody, and then it didn't work out with that person, and now you're like, I can't
like
listen to this song anymore. But like, you still like the song, and you're like,
yeah,
it sucks that I lost that song, but like, you don't have to lose it. You don't have to lose that beautiful song.
That's where therapy comes in.
Right.
That's where, like, you know, that you can still have a connection to it.
Right.
And it can be love-hate. It's absolutely okay to be love-hate.
Right.
And I think like exploring that, you know, going back to our earlier conversation and exploring like what it means for you and why you feel certain things and what emotions does it trigger for you and why does it trigger you in that way. I think that's okay. And I go back to like a little bit of added grace when it comes to, you know, how we feel about our, like, it's personal, but it's also public. It's it's what you project outward, but it's also what you feel inward. So it's so multidimensional. It's so complex, and it's okay to be conflicted. And I think once you're okay with that, like just truly let it sit with you and say, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the discomfort. I'm okay with the discomfort. And then you go forward.
Right.
I truly think it's like you gotta work through that part first, and then you can get into like, you know, reconciliation, maybe activism, maybe, you know, like whatever you want it to be for you. But
whatever. I mean, I am a creative person. I come from a background interior design. I love all art. That's where my brain is. And I fully support that, you know, I fully support it. And if you could, and I feel like a lot of Circassian people do this, is when they are artistically inclined, they some way, somehow incorporate their culture to their art in some way. It pops up, you know, whether it's one song or it's one art, maybe it's the whole theme of their art, you know. I feel like it just comes pouring out of us. And, you know, on this page, we support that. That's fully supported on this page. Yeah. Come on here. Talk about what you doodle. Like, I want to hear all of it.
Yeah.
And it's all beautiful. And thank you, Rasha. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I feel like we need a part. I feel like we need another installment of like Rasha's
I'm happy to do that. I've got so much to say, but yeah. Thank you for thinking of me, Noor. I really appreciate it, and making the time difference work. And maybe that's the feeling, is like, we should be talking about this more often. Right. And these topics are left to, like, you know, if someone's in the mood, like, I think, you know, we need a communal safe space to have them. And maybe it's not a physical space just yet, but like this virtual space, people can ask questions. I'm not licensed in any capacity, but I know some people who are within our community, and maybe, you know, like, maybe just having this discussion starts like this snowball effect. And, you know, in a few years from now, we can look back and say, oh shit, you know, this worked, this did something.
I hope so. And I hope that my content reflects all the things that I have inside that I care about, and I care about for the community. Instagram is telling me we have 1 minute left. I guess we've hit the time.
I didn't know there was an actual time limit. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know. So now we're on 59 seconds. So let's wrap it up. Nice and sweet. Put a bow on it. Thank you so much, Rasha. Thank you to everybody who tuned in, all the hearts, all the comments.
Love you guys.
Pass this one around, guys. Make it, you know, let everybody send it to your mom, your aunt.
Send it to the moms of the group. Yeah. All right.
Okay, well, I hope you have a great
Thank you.
day. Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Good luck in 2022. I know fireworks.
Yeah, likewise. Happy New Year, everyone.
Feel better.
Thank you.
You and
This
your
will
husband.
be gone soon.
Okay.
All right.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.